Tov is Nedarim Samach Vav, Nedarim 66. Today's Daf Yomi. We're going to start on the top of 66a, where we start with the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Poslim b'yom tovim v'shabbasos, Poslim b'yom tovim v'shabbasos, that you can use as a Pesach, as a way of annulling a vow. If a person had made a vow that he wasn't going to eat meat, let's say for a month, and you could say to him, if you had known that you're not allowed to put yourself in distress on Shabbos, that you're not allowed to fast on Shabbos. On Shabbos, you're supposed to have oneg, you're supposed to have delight. As part of that, people like to eat meat and drink wine. Would you have made this vow prohibiting yourself from eating meat and drinking wine? And if he says, I would never have made that vow, so then we annul the vow. Berishona, initially, Hayu Omer Osan, Hayama Mutar and Sharko Hayama Masur. And initially, when you annulled on the basis of that vow, they would say those days are prohibited. Those days become permitted, and all the other days are prohibited. And Shibara Akiva. Oh, hold on 1 second. Just give me 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. At Shibara Akiva and Torah Akiva came along. We made that he said if you partially annul a vow, you've in effect annulled the entire vow. And so therefore that's why Rabbi Akiva says the whole vow is annulled. Ketzad, what's an example of this? Let's say he sees a whole group of people. He says, I take a vow, I'm not going to have any benefit from any of you. And let's say he annuls one of them, and then all of them become annulled. But if he says, I'm not going to have benefit from this one and from this one, then we say Hutar Arishon, and if the first one was released, Huchuku, and all of them are released, because everything is dependent upon the first one, because they all follow him. But if Hutar Achron, but if the last one was released from the vow, Achron Mutar, then only the last one is permitted, and all the earlier ones become prohibited. Let's say you say, vow, Ani Nana Ozeh, Carbon Ozeh Carbon. If you say the word carbon in between, you say, this one to me is like a carbon, this one to me is like a carbon, then meaning to say that they're prohibited. And each one is viewed as a different one, and you're going to need a carbon, you're going to need an annulment for each one. Let's say you say Konem Yayin Shani Toim. So first we're talking about people, then we're talking about using the language of a carbon, and now we do a category of food. Can you do Neder Shoter Meklolo? You use a Pesach with respect to food. Excuse me. Let's say you say Kodem Yayin Shani Toim. Shani Yayin Rala Me'ayim. Let's say you say, I'm not going to drink any wine because wine is bad for the stomach. Amrlo, they said to him, Valo, Hamiyushan Yafal Me'ayim. They said to him, but old wine is good for the stomach. Hutar b'miyusham v'lo b'miyusham avad hutar el b'kol yayin. Not only is old wine not permitted him, but all wine becomes permitted. Let's say he says, Kodim Batsel Shani Toim. Let's say he says, I'm not going to eat any onion, Batsel Rawa, because the onion is bad for the heart. Amrlo, they said to him, hello, a kufri yafel, but a kufri onion, we had said earlier in the tractate, this refers to either an onion from the place of kufri, or it's an onion from a village. But we said that was good for the heart. Not only is the kufri onion permitted, but all onions are permitted. There was an incident, the Tiru, Rabbi Meir, and Rabbi Meir allowed them to eat all the onions. So coming along the Gemara, Hutara Achron, let's say he released the last person from the vow, Achron Mutar, if he says Konim was that, and then he released the last one, using a Pesach, the last one becomes permitted, Kulan Asurim, but all the earlier ones are become prohibited. Mantana, who's the author of our Mishnah, who says, who's the author of our Mishnah? Amarava. This is Rabbi Shimon. So who's the author of our Mishnah who says Hutar Echad Mehan Hutar Achar Nachar Mutar V'Kol Asurin? Who's the author? So Rabbi says this is Rabbi Shimon. So here we turn to the Ran for help. What do we mean when we say who is the author? The Ran says the Tani was that carbon. Now when our Mishnah says in the case of he says to this one is a carbon and to this one is a carbon, you need a Pesach or Kol Echav Echad, that you need a opening to annul each one. We see from here that in general, if you wouldn't have used this expression of carbon, the alma, if you hadn't used this the la'olam lo'ave prata, then in general you wouldn't need an annulment for each one. But the only time you need an annulment for each one is when you mention the word carbon. So without the mention of the need carbon, then it's just in general, it's just a general annulment, and they're all linked. So therefore, who is the author who is the one who says that if you release the last one is mutar, but all the ones are prohibited? So he says this is Rabbi Shimon. He says so Rabbi Shimon is talking about the following case from the Gemara. This is a reference to the Gemara in Shavuos Daf Amud Vav. If there were 5 people who are making a claim against a person, and each one said you have my deposit, and he says no, I don't have yours. He takes an oath. He says I have an oath. I swear by oath I don't have your deposit. And then he says not to you, not to you, not to you. Then he's not going to be liable for 5 separate oaths. He's just liable for 1 oath. But if it had not been the case, then we would say, so otherwise we would say that it's that he's liable only for 1 oath under those circumstances. So we see without specifying the word carbon, you're only liable for 1 oath. So that is the position of Rabbi Shimon that says, if he would say, I specifically, I swear I don't know you, I don't know you, I don't know you. So Rabbi Shimon says that they're all together. So therefore, we have to say that the author of our Mishnah, who says that they're all together, must be Rabbi Shimon. It just must be Rabbi Shimon. So if he says, well, was that, Rabbi Shimon will view them as all together. Now, in the next case of our Gemara is, let's say, he says, Konam Yayin Shani Toim. He takes a vow that he's not going to drink any wine. So then, under those circumstances, and then he says, but all, because he says it's bad for the stomach, but they say, but good wine is good for the stomach. So the Gemara says, then the vow is annulled. The Gemara asks, for typically the Ein Ra, why do they have to say that the good wine, why do they have to say specifically that old wine is good for the stomach? Why don't they just say it's not bad? So Amar Rabbi Abba of Od Yafekatani. Well, that's what the Mishnah really says. It says not only is old wine not bad, it's also good. So too, Kohen Batzel Shani Toim Shabbat. He says I'm not going to eat any onion because the onion is bad for the heart. But typically, the Ein Rab. Why don't we just say, and then you say he eats a kufri onion because the kufri onion is good. But why don't we just say that the kufri onion is not bad? Why do we have to say it's good? So I'm a Rabbi Abba. Oh, yeah, the same answer. We say that it's not only not bad, it's also good. Fine. You say to a person, you can use as a Pesach for a person, his own honor and the honor of his children. Meaning, say if you had, as the Mishnah is going to say, if you had known this vow, if you had known that by making this vow, if you had realized that it would be not a pleasant way of, if that it would be an unpleasant way of damaging your reputation or your children's reputation when you've still made the vow. And so that would be a legitimate way of annulling the vow. He says, if you would have only known that tomorrow they were going to say to you, Kachi v'saso shalponi. This is the way, Kachi v'saso shalponi. This is the way he acts. What does he do? Megarish es nashav. He divorces his wife. Val b'nosecha yiomrim, and about his daughters, they say b'nos crucial same. They say about his daughters are divorcees. So if you would have only known that this is what your reputation is going to be, or they're going to say, what did he see in this person's mother to divorce her? And he says, if I had only known this, I would never have made the vow. That is a legitimate way of annulling the vow. Let's say he says, Konem Shani no says Ponis Kura. This is the case we had in yesterday's daf. On the bottom of Samach Lav, on the bottom of 66, he says, I take a vow that I'm not going to marry this girl because she is unattractive. It turns out she's beautiful. Or Shechoro, he says she's dark-skinned. It turns out turns out she's light-skinned. Or Kitsara, he says I'm not going to marry her. She's too short. She's very tall. Mutarba, then he's allowed to marry her. Whoa, then the vow is annulled. Not because she was unattractive and suddenly she became attractive, but rather that's not the basis why he can marry her. Not because she changed. That would be a situation of Noah. But that's not the reason. But only because the vow was made a mistake. It was a mistaken vow. And there was indeed an incident with one person. So they took a vow that he wasn't going to marry his sister's daughter. So after he took a vow, he's not going to marry his sister's daughter because she's unattractive. Afterwards, he went into the house of Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel indeed made her look very pretty. Amar Rabbi Shmuel b'ni. So Rabbi Shmuel says to the person who made the vow not to marry the girl, he said, Mizuna Darta, did you take a vow against marrying this girl? Look how beautiful she is. Amalo Lav, he says, no, I didn't have that in mind. And so therefore she was released from her vow. Rabbi Shmuel released him from his vow. But also Shah, for at that moment, Rabbi Shmuel lifted up his voice and he cried and he said, Benos Israel knows him. He says the daughters of Israel are really beautiful. It's just that poverty makes them look unattractive. And when Rabbi Shmuel died, Benos Israel knows Kina. The daughters of Israel were lamenting, and they were saying, Benos Yisrael, Rabbi Yishmael, they were saying, daughters of Israel cry over Rabbi Yishmael. And so too it says by Shaul, Benos Yisrael, al Shaul b'chana. Daughters of Israel cry over Saul. He used to dress you and clothe you and give you gold jewelry. So we see the Gemara asks the question, this story of Rabbi Shmuel seems to contradict the earlier page of the Talmud, the earlier ruling, because the earlier ruling says that the only reason why Rabbi Shmuel, why the vow, if you take a vow that she's unattractive and then she becomes attractive, why we annul the vow is because the whole vow is not because she was unattractive and then she became attractive, but because at the time you took the vow, she was actually attractive, so it was a mistaken vow. But if she would be unattractive and then she would become attractive, that would not be a legitimate way of annulling the vow because that's called noah. That's a new circumstance. So, but Rabbi Shmuel comes along and she was unattractive and he made her attractive and that was a way of annulling the vow. So this is a Maisa story. This is a story that contradicts the previous ruling. So the Gemara says, Chisuri Mechzer. Indeed, the text of the Mishnah is missing words. We have to fill it in. This is what we have to say. Rabbi Shmuel says not only if she was attractive at the time that you thought she was unattractive or it was a mistaken vow, but even if she was unattractive, but she became attractive, because Rabbi Shmuel's of the position, says the Ran, Rabbi Shmuel's of the position, to sphere to post them a noad, that Rabbi Shmuel's of the position that you could actually annul a vow with noad, with a new circumstance. That's a legitimate way of annulling a vow. And indeed, Rabbi Shmuel himself ruled this way because indeed that's what happened. Rabbi Shmuel brought her into his home and he made her look beautiful. So now the Gemara says, what did Rabbi Shmuel do exactly on top of 66a? Tana, we say, Shem to Seves Haisa. Rabbi Shmuel she had a false tooth. Also, Rabbi Shmuel changed her. He made her a golden tooth. He made her a gold tooth. Kishacha Rabbi Shmuel died. Rabbi Shmuel died. The eulogizers started eulogizing for him as follows: Benos Yisrael, Rabbi Shmuel Bachana. Daughters of Israel cry for Rabbi Shmuel. Hamal he dresses you beautifully. There was a person who said to his wife, he says to his wife, I take a vow that you're not allowed to have any benefit from me. You can't have any benefit from me unless you give over your food to Rabbi Yehuda, to Rabbi Shimon to taste. Meaning to say that you make terrible food, I want you to give it to Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. If they taste it and they like it, then we can get back together. So can you imagine somebody saying like that too? So you have to go to the gadol door and taste your food to settle a marital dispute. So it doesn't matter. Rabbi Yehuda was a humble man, and he said, Rabbi Yehuda taught him. Rabbi Yehuda tasted it. He said, Kal v'chomer. He said, I'll make a logical argument. So shalom hanish ishto. Make peace between a husband and wife. Amra Torah, the Torah says, Shmi shenichta b'kedusha, my name which was written in holiness. Meaning to say, when you write the Sefer Torah, you have to write L'Shem Kedusha Sefer Torah, and you have to write but that's when you write the passage of the Sota for the bitter waters. It has to be written for the purpose L'Shma. It has to be written for the purpose of using it for this bitter waters. And before you write the name of God, you have to say L'Shem Kedusha Hashem. But nevertheless, even though the name of God is written in Kedusha, in order to test this woman, the Sota woman, you erase the name. You're going to erase it over the bitter waters, and some have the language, the gears of the suffix, even though we're just uncertain whether or not she sinned. And I, who am I? How much more so should I just humble myself by tasting this food? So Rabbi Shimon wrote time. Rabbi Shimon did not refuse to taste it. He said, Yamusu kol b'nei almana he says, first of all, he cursed the man. 1 second, Rabbi Yosef, we'll come back to your question in a moment. He said, first of all, he cursed the man because he said, let him die and let her children be the children of a widow. And rather than Shimon moving from his place to taste it, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, it's not appropriate. He says, I don't want to be accustomed to be making such vows. If I'm making it too easy for them to annul their vows. And so therefore I don't want to do this. Yeah, Rabbi Yosef, you had a question.
Just, I think it's incredible that Rabbi Shmuel is the one who talks about the beauty of the daughters of Israel, because in Nedarim he says, Bnei Israel nikaparatan, they're not black, they're not white, they're benoni. Right, like so he talks also there about the beauty of the children of Israel. So
it's the same Rabbi Shmuel. Okay, beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay. A person says to his wife, he says to his wife, he says, we're done. You can't have any benefit from me anymore unless you go and spit on Rashbag. So she went, she didn't spit on Rashbag, she spit on his clothing. It doesn't say whether or not he was wearing them. This rabbi was trying to embarrass Rashbag, and she didn't do it because she just spit on his clothing. No, Meirek Amani Rashbag, Zilusa Rabasa. He says, no, actually spitting on the clothing of Rashbag is a great embarrassment for Shimon Gamliel. Who the Amar Law with the base? So someone who says to his wife, he says, you can't have any benefit from me unless you can find mum does not hear a blemish, but it means me'uma. That's what the Ran says. Unless you can show there until ad chetiri mum yafeh shebecha Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi. Unless Rabbi Shmuel bar Yossi can find one good thing in you, if there's one redeeming feature in you, until then we're done. Amar lahem shema rosh anah. So Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi says, let's get to work. Let's find one good feature in her. He says, maybe her head is beautiful. Amar no, segalgal. Her head is round. It's not pretty. Shema sarana. Maybe she's got beautiful hair. He said, no, dome lanitze pishtan. Her hair looks like flax. No good. Shema, he now knows. Let's say her eyes are beautiful. Teruto saying they're round. They're no good. Shema is now knows. Let's say her ears are nice. Kafuo saying her ears are extra large. No good. Shema chotmana. Let's say she's got a beautiful nose. Balamu. No, it's very thin, no good. Shema sipsosanos, let's say she has beautiful lips. Avos, and very thick. Shema tzavarna, let's say she's got a beautiful neck. Shakatu, her neck is short. Shema kresa now, let's say she's got a beautiful belly. Tzavahu, it's distended. Shema laglanos, maybe she's got beautiful legs. Rechavos kishal avza, no, they're wide like a duck. Shema. So Shema Shmana, let's say she has a beautiful name. They say, no, her name is also ugly. Lachuchas Shma. Her parents named her dirty one. Amrohan, her parents named her dirty one. Yafek Karamas Lachukis. It's a good thing they named her the dirty one. Because it's good. They were right for naming her the dirty one because she's filled with blemishes, Visharya, and he permitted her, meaning to say her name suits her. So that was one good feature he had of her, was that her name suits her, and therefore he allowed her to return to her husband. So her name suits her. Bar Baval the Salaka Aradi Israel says it's like the story of Reb Zusha, who says that when he comes up to heaven, they're going to say, did you learn Torah? He says, no. Did you give tzedakah? No. Were you big tzaddik? No. So then they're going to say to him, so you're so honest. So you go straight into the world to come. So Bar Bavel the Salaka Aradi Israel. So there was a Babylonian who went up to the land of Israel and Nasib Issachar, he married an Israeli, so a Babylonian and an Israeli, a Persian, an Iranian, an Iraqi, and a Jew, an Iraqi Jew and an Israeli Jew. What could go wrong? Amara Bashu Trey Talfi. He said to her, cook me 2 lentils. So Bashu Trey Talfi. She took him literally. He said, cook me a couple of lentils. She took him literally, and she made only 2 lentils. He was upset. He said to her the next day, Bashiu griva, cook me a griva. Griva is a very large amount. Bashiu griva. So she cooked him exactly that, a griva, a very large amount. He was again upset. Zili Isui Trey Butsini says, go bring for me 2 melons from the market, basically. So the word lamp also is the word Butsini. So she brought him 2 lamps instead of 2 melons. Amala. Zili Tavan Yason Aresha the Bava. He was frustrated. He said, go break them on the top of the Bava. Bava can be a gate. But Ava Yosef Bava Bambuta Bava. But there was a great rabbi, Bava Bambuta, who was sitting by the Bava, by the gate. The word Bava means gate, and his name was Bava. Vikadain Dina, and he was judging the case. So she went, and she broke it on his head. Amar said to her, Ma Hadain David. He said, what are you doing? She says to him, she said, this is what my husband told me to do. You see from here that the husband kept taking her back, and she kept doing exactly what he wanted, so that they were a loving couple. They were just going through some language barriers. Amar ad asit ritzon balech. He said, so Bava Bambuta said, you've done the will of your husband. God should take out for you. God should help you produce two children, like two sons, like Baba Bambuta, two sons who are Torah scholars, because you tried to make your husband happy. So, and even though she was basically, he was saying that even though he was saying that she disrespected the Chacham, nevertheless, since she had a good intent for the sake of heaven, therefore she blessed. Therefore, Baba Ben Zuta blessed her. So stop the recording.